Welcome back to another edition of Stand on Guard. We're at question period, or as I say today, I'm calling it question and no answer period. That's always been the case. Hope you enjoyed yesterday's question period along with the vote on the carbon tax exemption, which didn't happen. And we all got to see a Liberal MP from Avalon, Newfoundland, Ken McDonald, apparently give the finger. Yes, pretty hard for him to deny that. But I bet you they squashed it all behind the scenes. You're not going to hear another word about it. But thankfully, a couple of media outlets, including my own, Post Millennial, covered this yesterday. Mainstream media totally ignored it. What do you expect? Anyway, we're back again today. So I hope this is going to be worth your while. I always enjoy this. I enjoy the comments. And please add your comments to the conversation because they're important. And I really enjoy listening. And I really enjoy reading. But I'm here again today because of the Freedom Convoy trial. You know, the trial with Chris Barber and Tamara Leach is in recess again for 2 more weeks. I mean, this is ludicrous. I expect these people to pay for the lawyers, waiting around for this trial. It's lasted longer than the Freedom Convoy itself, and that is a disgrace. That is an absolute disgrace because this is a bit of a show trial, is it not? Not in the sense of what Joseph Stalin used to do in Soviet Russia, but in the sense of making people afraid to protest because they know they're going to have to go through what, 6, 8, 12 weeks of a criminal trial and possibly get convicted at the other end. And even if they're not convicted, the public humiliation, the embarrassment, the cost, all of these factors prevent people from legitimately protesting. And that's what the Liberal government's doing with this thing. And it's really quite astonishing. So anyway, welcome you to please please watch today. And we're about to have the first question from the leader of the opposition. So I bet you Justin Trudeau's not there again today. It's Tuesday. He's been averaging one show a week. No pun intended. It's been a show, yes. But he hasn't been there very often, once a week for the past month, at least. Since Parliament resumed, he's been there never more than twice a week. So this is really quite a thank you, Alice. Thank you, Alice, for joining me. We got some people on board here. Yes, I've been rattling on about the Freedom Convoy trial not being in session again this week or next week. Might resume the week after. Tamara Leach was telling me that 3 weeks recess. They're checking in tomorrow, whatever checking in means. That it's just to keep them from actually going back home for a while. Keep them in town for this. But I'm doing question period because I'm not covering the Freedom Convoy trial because I think that is one of the paramount events happening in Canada today. I know all of you out there do too. So I will put on the statements, and we're anticipating Pierre Poilievre coming up very shortly to ask the first question of the day.
1 in 3 Canadians live in a household experiencing financial difficulties. But despite these difficulties, the Prime Minister decided to respond to his declining polls and the revolt of the Atlantic Caucus and axe the tax, but for only 3% of the population residing in Atlantic Canada. But Mr. Speaker, it's cold across all of Canada. And I have heard from people saying the cost of living has increased so rapidly and it greatly exceeds our income. We can only afford food on sale. And others are going out without meals totally. Canadians deserve better. When an opportunity came to help Canadians, we saw just yesterday the people in Thunder Bay are not being heard. They elected a Liberal, the MP from Thunder Bay, Superior North, who was proud to vote against this motion. Mr. Speaker, after 8 years, Canadians want and need a new government that takes care of the people. Thank you very much.
The honourable member from Winnipeg North.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. We want to give a reality check to the leader of the Conservative Party today, Mr. Speaker. Climate change is real. It is actually happening, Mr. Speaker. As I pointed out, as the Conservatives like to flip-flop all over the place on the issue, I want to emphasize a point here for the member across the way. When it comes across to financing of oil, electricity, natural gas,
Lamoureux.
which one do you
This is
think
the guy
is
who
the
never
most
shuts up
costly to
in
Canadians? It
Winnipeg.
is oil, Mr. Speaker.
The
One of the ways in which you
Conservatives
can
are
make a
flip-flopping.
good difference is by getting Canadians to look at
It's the hypocrisy of this Liberal government that drives me maddest and craziest, because these people are just so full of themselves and so full of BS. They're so full of crap. It just oozes out of their skin. I mean, listen to this.
Conservative Party wake up, listen to Canadians, and realize that they
you know
need
what
to
happened
care about the
yesterday
environment.
with Ken McDonald. That was just incredible. Here's a guy who was actually in active consultation. Oh, let's shut up for a while here.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. The Prime Minister is not worth the cost. Now he's panicking. He's trying to save not only the carbon tax, but also his political career. And the Bloc is there to support him. The Bloc voted in favor of keeping the tax on home heating. And we learned in La Presse that the Bloc wants to keep the Liberals in power for another 2 years. We also learned in La Presse that there was a call between the Bloc Québécois leader and the Prime Minister, a call to protect and save this Liberal government's agenda. So, will they be transparent about all the conditions of this new costly coalition?
Yes, good question.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Oh, he's there. Holy crap.
Mr. Speaker, as everyone in this room knows,
he's there.
I am always willing to work with whoever wants to do more to fight climate change, who wants to do more to help Canadian families through these difficult times. I'm very happy that the Bloc Québécois has recognized that the best way to fight climate change is to put a price on pollution and to help families with associated costs. And that's what we're doing. I regularly have conversations with the Bloc Québécois leader, but I haven't had any recently. The last time we talked, the Bloc leader and I, we talked about the Middle East and Israel.
What a liar.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The Prime Minister is desperate to save his carbon tax, especially on heat. And he started by giving a temporary pause to some people in a region where he was plummeting in the polls and his caucus was revolting. But then he found that the entire country was in revolt and he needed a new coalition partner to save him from my common sense confidence vote to take the heat off, to take the tax off the heat. He got that support from the Bloc Québécois. We now learn that he has been in discussions with the Bloc to help him stay in power for 2 years. What did he promise the separatists for them to enter into this costly carbon tax coalition?
No, it is damn ridiculous that a separatist party will keep them going.
Contrary to the divisive rhetoric that the Leader of the Opposition is putting forward, the measures we announced on transitioning people on oil to heat pumps apply right across the country. The doubling of the rural top-up right across the country. We're going to continue to work with Canadians to phase out home heating oil, which is dirtier and more expensive. And I want to recognize that we are willing to work with anyone in this House who will step up in the fight against climate change. And I thank the Leader of the Bloc Québécois for continuing to be firm on building a better future for all our kids, on fighting for climate change, against climate change on this and in other occasions. I welcome all parliamentarians to stand up in the fight against climate change.
What a sham. Hey folks, isn't this a sham, the fight against climate change? It's all a farce. We don't produce enough global gas emission, greenhouse gas emissions. It's
now
garbage.
He's thanking the separatists for helping him save his carbon tax and support his plan to quadruple the tax on heat, gas, and groceries. This Prime Minister is playing a very dangerous game.
It is
First,
a dangerous
he
game.
Canadians by giving a temporary pause to some people in a region where he was plummeting in the polls and his caucus was revolting. When all Canadians then revolted against this divisive plan, he's turned to the separatists who say that they are going to keep him in power for 2 years and that the Leader of the Bloc has had a call with the Prime Minister to do it. In the interest of transparency, will the Prime Minister reveal what he promised the separatists for them to join in this costly carbon tax?
Yeah, good question. This is BS. The separatists keep this damn liberal government going.
Mr. Speaker, the level of divisiveness in the
What a
rhetoric of
liar.
the opposition is truly unfortunate. Mr. Speaker, the vast majority of Canadians, like the vast majority of members in this House of Commons, recognize that climate change is real.
No, they don't.
We need
No,
to
they
continue
don't.
to step up in the fight against climate change, not just for the well-being of the planet and future generations, but for families' bottom lines, for families' jobs and careers as well. And we will continue to do that. As members of this party know, of the House of Commons know, I exchange regularly with leaders of different political parties. I haven't spoken recently with the leader of the bloc, except on the issue of the Middle East, but I'm always open to talking to any party leader that wants to talk about fighting climate change.
Anybody who believes this garbage, nobody goes to bed at night worrying about climate change.
Divide and distract from the fact that Canadians, after 8 years of his government, cannot eat, heat, or house themselves. But in a strange way, he united all Canadians at the Premier's Conference, who all agree, all 10 of them unanimously disagree that the Prime Minister's approach to take the tax off temporarily for only some. They said that this federal carbon tax policy treats Canadians differently, and they expect a change. Will the Prime Minister pull together all the premiers in an emergency carbon tax conference so that we can take the tax off and keep the heat on?
Yeah, because he's got all the premiers are against him. He is isolated.
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the measures we announced a couple of weeks ago help any Canadian everywhere across the country to get off home heating oil towards
help them get off home heating oil.
Is cleaner, less expensive,
it doesn't
and better
work
for our future. These are things that we've done right across the country. Only the Conservatives would think that taking serious action on climate change and supporting Canadians right across the country with affordability measures would be divisive. Well, it is divisive if you think that climate change is fake. But for everybody else other than the Conservative Party, we know that we can come together to fight climate change.
There is nothing to fight. And Canada is not producing enough greenhouse gas emissions to make any difference in the world.
Canadians know that the only thing fake is this Prime Minister.
He is as phony as they get.
Today, the NDP flip-flopped on its flip-flop. First, they voted 16 times in favor of the carbon tax on home heat. Then they voted to quadruple the tax. Then yesterday, they panicked and flip-flopped and voted for my plan to take the tax off home heating, admitting that they were wrong all along. And now today, they said they're in favor of the tax on home heat by refusing my amendment. So will the Prime Minister tell us at 2:26 p.m. what is the NDP position on the carbon tax right now?
That's interesting.
Not certain if that has to do with the administration. That question has to do with the administration of the House. But I do see the Right Honourable Prime Minister rising to his feet.
Oh.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
How astute. At least you notice that.
What is clear is that the Conservatives are all ready to try and divide Canadians one against the other in any possible way they can. When the reality is the only division around climate change is that Conservative politicians still doubt whether it's real or not, and certainly don't think we should be doing anything to fight climate change. However, everybody else across the country in all different parties knows that it's a real issue that we're going to continue to step up and fight.
Oh, everybody believes you,
Conservatives to continue to look to divide and hide from the reality of climate change.
He is totally obsessed with something that is completely a red herring.
Honourable member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, what the opposition leader is talking about, this phone call, it never occurred. The only true thing that the member is saying is that we are separatist. The opposition leader, while we're talking about him, he spent $3,300 on Facebook ads between August and November. The Conservative Party spent $80,000. The Liberal Party spent $8,500, and the Prime Minister spent $20,000 on Facebook. Meanwhile, social networks are intimidating Quebec and Canadian media. How do they explain that?
Yeah, intimidate you.
The Right
Yeah,
Honourable
because
Prime Minister.
you're a bloody
Mr.
gangster
Speaker,
holding the country
what's
ransom.
very clear is our political allegiances. Despite our political stripe, whether we're federalist or separatist, we always care about the environment and protecting children.
What a joke
and
you
we
are.
will work with allies. Now, as for social networks and information shared with Canadians, we're trying to work very hard with Facebook and Google because they don't want to pay journalists for their work. We're going to continue to do everything that needs to be done to keep Canadians informed about that and about other issues, but we do have some work ahead of us.
We,
The
as
Honourable Member
Canadians,
for
have some
Bellaire-Chambly.
work ahead of us to get rid of you.
We want the government to take a strong stance. We would support a strong stance by the Government of Canada. A few days ago, we learned that over 500 people were laid off at TVA. 500 people lost their jobs because of social networks stealing all the ad revenue of legitimate media. Meanwhile, the Conservatives and the Liberal government are encouraging them by giving them dozens of thousands of dollars each and every month.
What a
kind
whiner.
of message does that send to people? What kind of message does that send to Meta, who doesn't seem to
This
respect
guy needs
anybody?
a good kick in the ass.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we were extremely clear about how concerned we are by Meta's behavior in particular.
Talk
Meta
about a
is
huge
indeed
distraction.
refusing to support our democracy. They are refusing to allow journalists to do their excellent and thorough work, which is essential to the proper functioning of our institutions and our democracy.
You
We
are
will
preventing
continue
journalists
to
from doing their
defend
work.
Media
You
against
are the
web
censor.
giants. Web giants that the Conservatives never seem to miss an occasion to defend. We will do everything that we can to keep Canadians informed throughout this. The Honourable Member for Burnaby South.
Hasn't got the IQ of a cucumber.
It was cynical and divisive. But the Conservatives are no better. They're more interested in playing games than actually helping people. Because if they were genuine about helping people, they would support our plan to take GST off of home heating for all Canadians, to help people access clean and affordable ways
that's
to
going to
heat
make
their
a
home,
huge
and to make
difference.
the big oil and gas companies pay for it. But we know that the corporate Conservatives will never stand up to big oil and gas. But will the Prime Minister support our plan to help all Canadians?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
What a clown.
Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we know that one of the things that helps Canadians is fighting climate change and supporting them in that fight against climate change. I know the NDP used to support phasing out coal. It is surprising to me that they are not supportive of phasing out heating oil, because that's exactly what we are doing. We're phasing out home heating oil because it is dirtier and more expensive for homes right across the country.
Out anything.
And we're facilitating the delivery of heat pumps, including for free for low-income Canadians in provinces that choose to step up and participate. We're going to continue to fight climate change. I really wish the NDP were as unequivocal as that.
Your heat pumps don't work. Your heat pumps are a cruel joke, and you are a bigger joke.
Order.
This guy. Order.
Order. The Honourable Member from Burnaby South.
La question à laquelle on devrait...
Here is the question that we want an answer to.
Don't expect an answer.
Will there be a break for all Canadians in our fight against climate change? All the Conservatives do is say slogans. Will their CEO friends allow them to vote to help Canadians? The Liberals want to pit regions against each other. Will the Prime Minister acknowledge his mistake and offer all Canadians a break on residential heating?
Yeah.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Oh.
Mr. Speaker,
I've never seen people
more than just a
scramble
break. We're offering
for
thousands
distraction
and
more
millions
than
of
these clowns
Canadians
here.
the opportunity to phase out heating oil because it's dirtier, it's more expensive, and there are too many low-income Canadians who currently depend on home heating oil. So we are going to help them transition to heat pumps. That's
freeze
good
with a
policy.
heat pump.
That's good policy for Canadians. That's a good policy to fight climate change too. We are going to continue to be there to help Canadians. And we
What
hope
Liberal
that all
is benefiting from
parliamentarians
these
will
heat
join
pumps?
us.
Got to find that out. What Liberal is benefiting from these heat pumps?
Prime Minister pause the paying of his carbon tax for 3% of families in region where he is plummeting in the polls. The Liberal minister from Newfoundland said if people in other regions wanted the same pause, that they should have elected Liberals. But people in York region elected Liberal MPs. In fact, 7 of them, and yet their constituents aren't getting the pause. Right. Yesterday, these MPs could have voted to take the tax off for the residents of York region, but they voted with the Prime Minister. So can anybody from York region stand up and explain their choice to leave their constituents in the cold?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I have said a number of times in this House, we have taken action that addresses affordability for particularly vulnerable Canadians. Heating oil costs 2 to 4 times that of natural gas. It accelerated by 75% in 2022, but we've done it in a manner that addresses the climate crisis at the same time and ensures affordability for people going forward. It will save $2,500 a year. It applies to people who live in every province and territory in this country, so long as provinces and territories step up. The shame in this chamber is that this party has no plan to address the climate crisis. I don't even know if
there is no climate crisis, and Canada can't solve it. No, this is bullshit. We know there's no climate crisis, and we know nothing Canada does is going to solve any climate crisis.
It doesn't help the people in Newmarket, in Aurora, in Richmond Hill, in Woodbridge, in Markham, in Stouffville, or in North York. All of these communities got sold out by their Liberal MPs, and they can't even tell people why. They had a choice to stand with their communities, and instead they stood with the Prime Minister, and now they're hiding and hoping that everybody forgets. If these MPs won't listen to their constituents, won't advocate for them in the House of Commons, and won't even stand to defend their vote, then what are they even doing here?
Yeah, got to respond to Carol here, who just commented about what happens when the electric grid goes out because of so much reliance on heat pumps. Well, actually, I was talking to former Ag Minister Jerry Ritz this morning, and he said the same thing to me. He said the Atlantic Canadian electricity grid is so weak and so low, it cannot accommodate heat pumps. And heat pumps don't work anyway in the temperatures that we live in Canada. These people are so full of crap. This program is a lie. L-I-E. Capital L-I-E. It's a lie.
Eroding the Canada's credibility in the international community, eroding the ability of the world to address the climate crisis. This is enormously reckless, Mr. Speaker.
There's no climate crisis.
Risk for the future of our children.
This is the Trudeau government. You are the crisis. You are destroying this country. You are bankrupting this country. You are bringing us lower and lower every week. That is the crisis.
The member from Parry Sound, Muskoka.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister paused the paying of his carbon tax for 3% of Canadians in regions where he was plummeting in the polls. Then the Liberal Rural Affairs Minister said if people in other regions wanted the same pause, well, they should elect Liberals. But the people of Sudbury did elect a Liberal MP, and yet her constituents aren't getting a break. Yesterday, she could have voted to pause the carbon tax on all forms of home heating for the residents of Sudbury.
Yeah, I'm not sure
Why is this government
is
so committed to quadrupling their carbon tax that they forced the member for Sudbury to leave her constituents out in the cold?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have a serious plan.
Don't get this hack back on his feet.
But also addresses the climate crisis. The leader of the official opposition has no plan. He mouths taglines like technology, not taxes. These coming from a guy who actually has zero background in technology, zero background in business. This coming from somebody who has been
and you have zero background in intelligence.
In technology through the passage of Bill C-49, something that is actually supported by the Conservative Premier of Nova Scotia and the Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador. Shame on them. Having no plan for climate change, having no plan for the economy of the future.
Shame on them. Shame on them because they're not obsessing over crap like you are.
Colleagues,
this is one of the worst games in political history.
I'm having some difficulty hearing members ask
this
questions.
Pointless
and to
obsession.
Give answers.
Oh,
I would ask
shut up. This pointless obsession with climate change and this non-existent, catastrophic, existential threat. It is nonsense.
Confirmed that this government's so-called climate plan is nothing more than a punishing tax on heat gas, and groceries. And after yesterday's vote, it is crystal clear that this NDP Liberal government has no plan to make life more affordable either. Yesterday, the member for Sault Ste. Marie could have voted to pause the carbon tax on home heating for all the residents of the Soo and all of Northern Ontario. But he voted no. Why is this government so committed to quadrupling the carbon tax that they forced the member for Sault Ste. Marie to leave his constituents out in the cold?
If Wilkinson gets back up and reads his script, I'm going to go. I'm going to go. Oh, not Seamus.
Equity thing that's happening here.
The stand-up comedian.
Equally, when they start out unequal, that just perpetuates an inequality. It costs
this guy never makes an ounce of
heat
sense.
your home on heating oil as it does natural gas, and that is a particular problem when you live in a region like me that does not have access to natural gas. Let us pick up for those people hardest.
You don't have
hit,
access
Mr.
to electricity
Speaker.
either.
Let's make sure that they get the break that they deserve.
He does. His region doesn't have access to enough electricity either to power the heat pumps, which are going to be useless because they don't work in temperatures below minus 15 degrees Celsius. And they're not telling you that. And I don't know why the Conservatives aren't telling people that. These heat pumps don't work. These heat pumps are not going to be a solution. And there's not enough electricity on the grid in Atlantic Canada to power them.
The Prime Minister has paused the paying of his carbon tax for 3% of families in areas where he is plummeting in the polls. And the Liberal Rural Affairs Minister says if others wanted a similar pause, well, they should have elected more Liberals. Mr. Speaker, the people of Thunder Bay Rainy River did elect a Liberal MP, yet they are not seeing this pause. And just yesterday, that member had an opportunity to vote to take the tax off and keep the heat on, but he voted against our common sense motion. So, Mr. Speaker, why is this government so committed to quadrupling the carbon tax that the member from Thunder Bay Rainy River left the people of Northern Ontario outside in the cold?
Yeah. Can somebody say World Economic Forum?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
What do you think is going on here? These people are following a script.
Affordability in the long term for vulnerable Canadians who are suffering from high costs associated with home heating oil that has accelerated significantly in the last 2 years, but done it in a manner that is consistent with the fight against climate change, a fight that is not just Canadian, but is happening in countries around the world. I would say, Mr. Speaker, that it is the height of hypocrisy for the member opposite to be talking about this, about a price on pollution that they endorsed in their campaign platform and was part of the basis on which he was elected to this House.
The price of pollution. What gibberish. We all know, don't we, folks?
Honourable member from
that carbon is not pollution.
Plan for affordability after 8 years, which must be why the Prime Minister has paused his carbon tax paying for 3% of families. But people in Thunder Bay Superior North want to know why their MP, a Liberal minister, wasn't able to get the same pause for people across Northern Ontario. And just yesterday, she had the opportunity to vote to keep the heat on and take the tax off for people across Northern Ontario. So again, Mr. Speaker, why is this government so committed to quadrupling their carbon tax that the member from Thunder Bay Superior North was forced to leave the people of Northern Ontario out in the cold?
Because they don't care if people freeze or starve. It's all about ideology. Liberal, woke ideology. That's all it's about.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
It is shameful that the party opposite has no plan to address a crisis that is
it's a crisis.
All of humanity.
Yes.
And I would tell you, in the modern age, having a recognition and acceptance of the realities of climate change is critical to having an economic plan that can be relevant for the future. What we hear is the leader of the opposition will cancel the Volkswagen battery manufacturing plant, that he opposes offshore wind and hydrogen development in Newfoundland and Nova Scotia, that he would get rid of the Canada Infrastructure Bank, that would eliminate the small modular reactor project at Darlington. He is opposed to everything. And at the end of the day, he has no plan for the economy and he has no plan for the...
You know what, folks? When these people start the Third World War, you're not going to hear anything more about climate change. Suddenly, that's not going to be a crisis because we'll have a real crisis that these idiots, these morons, these inept, incompetent fools started. And because they're so focused on BS, they're so focused on this existential crisis that isn't, they are in the middle of watching the Third World War start. And that is the shameful thing, that we have clowns and idiots and incompetents like this running this country. It is time for these people to go.
Mr. Speaker, 547
Oh, it's a
layoffs at
blockhead.
TVA last week. It was the
It's-
darkest day
what
in the
is this
history
with
of our TV
TVA
industry. The federal government must realize that C11 and C18 will not be enough. The government must announce a $50 million emergency fund for news media.
Oh,
and the
of course.
government must
More subsidies for news media. Do you believe this? They want more censorship, more subsidies for the goddamn legacy news media that promotes Trudeau and puts up with idiots like this blockhead here. So they want more censorship and they want more subsidies. These people are crazy.
Mr. Speaker.
And here's
Now,
the idiot
of course,
who's going to give
there
it to
has
them.
been a crisis in the media over the past few years, and we have seen the impact of that crisis on media across the country. That's why we've implemented programs to help. I'm,
The
of
crisis
course,
is they
very
don't communicate to
concerned
people
about the
anymore.
announcement of the 547 layoffs.
They're
We're
propagandists.
working on many different options which are on the table, and we're looking into everything we can do to support the media. But the Conservatives have systematically blocked us from modernizing our laws. If we had been able to modernize the Broadcasting Act in 2020, the first time we tabled the bill, then there might not be these layoffs happening today. So the
Oh, there might
Conservatives
not
are
be
not
this, like
helping,
we'd
Mr.
have more
Speaker.
censorship, though, wouldn't we? Bloody idiot.
The honourable member for Lac-Saint-Jean.
What an
Mr.
airhead.
Speaker, the Bloc Québécois supports successful immigration. We've said so loud and clear.
I am so
That's why
sick
we
of
want
the Bloc.
immigrants to be able to find housing.
You know, I am so sick of listening to these blockheads stand up in a federal House of Commons and whine about more money for Quebec so they can separate. Quebec would not last more than 3 years as an independent country because of all the money you and I are giving them in equalization payments. This is just such a farce. We put up with this. I am just so beyond caring about the.
I thank our colleague for bringing up the very important and relevant issue of housing today. Today, we announced that the CMHC will build 28,000 new housing units over the next 5 years, including 5,000 affordable units. In fact, this has been accomplished over the past 5 years, and it's twice what has been accomplished over the past 30 years. So this is what we can do when we work together with not-for-profits, municipalities, and the federal government.
This guy, every time I see Duclos stand up, I have to laugh. This is the idiot who said you should be getting a COVID booster for the rest of your life. And he got 5 or 6 shots, and he had COVID 3 times. He was always in the hospital with COVID. What a joke. And these people don't even seem to think there's anything strange about that. And this jackass standing up asking for more censorship. Well, they're speaking to Quebecers all the speaking to the Bloc, aren't they? And you guys are propping up the Liberal government. So I can't take a word you say seriously.
The Honourable Minister.
Oh, here's the
across the way
Open
is
Borders
disconnected
Minister.
not only from Quebecers, but also from the news. Today, we heard news from Quebec, and the only way to
the Open
fix
Borders
the labor
Ministry.
shortage is through immigration. That's one of the main solutions.
Yeah,
Quebec's
just
GDP
keep
is
on
lower than
opening the
expected
border.
because of labor
Everybody.
shortage, lack of workers, and
Just
we
wait
need
till those
immigration to fix that.
Palestinian
Successful
refugees
immigration,
arrive.
of course.
And
The Honourable Member for Charlebourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, the Bloc Québécois separatists joined the Liberals yesterday in voting against our motion to remove the carbon tax for home heating for all Canadians. Yet, the Premier of Quebec signed a declaration with all other provinces to support our initiative. So the Bloc Québécois is working against the Premier of Quebec and for the Prime Minister of Canada. Who would have thought? What concessions did the Bloc Québécois get to keep this incompetent and costly Prime Minister in power?
I want to know what they gave these goddamn separatists so they could keep propping up the Liberal government.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't know about you, but as for me, I'm a big fan of Infoman. And last week, Infoman did a segment on the Conservative Party of Canada's half-truths.
What the hell is that?
They mentioned half-truths twice.
Is he an eco-terrorist?
So Infoman determined that the Conservatives' claims are false. The Conservatives claim that the carbon tax has a 16% impact on carbon tax, but that is in fact false. It's 0.15%.
No, it's
Factually
16.
speaking. So that's a really great episode
This idiot
of Infoman
knows that.
with conservative untruths, and I recommend
even the
it to
governor of the
everyone.
Bank of Canada said that. It's 16%. Of course it is. What a bloody halfwit.
Mr.
just
Speaker,
keep
this is
spewing
quite funny.
the lies.
Infoman is now leading the government's future.
I don't even know what the hell an
After 8 years
Infoman
of
is.
this Liberal government, though, Mr. Speaker, a new coalition was
Probably
formed
some
yesterday.
Quebec folk hero,
a
no
bloc
doubt.
Liberal coalition. We were already tired of the bloc of the Liberal NDP coalition. Now there is another coalition, a separatist, independentist, federalist coalition, the Bloc Liberal coalition. The Bloc is supporting Liberal Party so that they can stay in power for another 2 years.
It really
now,
is
this government
ridiculous.
is known for its extravagant spending, and we want to know what the Bloc Québécois got
the
in
Bloc is
exchange
known
for making this
for
deal with the Liberal
sucking up
Party.
Canadian tax dollars to spend on their private
The
initiatives in Quebec.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it's true that there is a coalition in this House. The Liberal Party of Canada, the Bloc Québécois, the Green Party, and the New Democratic Party are all in this House, and all these parties believe that climate change is an existential
threat.
threat.
All in it
There's
together.
one party
There
in this
it
House
is,
that doesn't believe that,
existential threat.
and that's the Conservative Party. So there are 4 parties in this House which believe that we need to take action against climate change, that we need to put a price on pollution, that we need to promote green energy, clean energy, and electrification of transports. And there's only one party in this House that doesn't believe in that, and that is the Conservative Party of Canada.
There's plenty of morons in the House of Commons who want to shut the power off.
Mr. Speaker, it costs a lot to vote Bloc, and they demonstrated that once again yesterday. Yesterday, the new Bloc Liberal Costly Coalition voted against our common sense motion, which would have allowed Canadians across the country to keep warm in winter. We cannot say it often enough. They voted together to drastically increase the carbon tax at the expense of Canadians. They are not worth the cost. It's costly to vote for the Bloc, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, what concessions did the Bloc Québécois obtain in exchange for keeping this incompetent Prime Minister in power?
Good, yes, but this is questions but no answer period. Remember? And you won't get an answer. They are bloody, they're both lying about this. Oh, look at the Pablo with his new haircut.
What is he talking about? Where
What
was
is he
our
talking about?
colleague this summer when rivers were overflowing, when there were wildfires? Where was he
and it
this
was all
summer
due to
when
climate
people were
change.
displaced all over the place, Mr. Speaker? The Conservatives
Where the
and
hell
their
were you?
backward policies,
Living it up, no doubt.
They refuse to believe in climate change. They're climate change deniers. They want to move Canada backwards.
Everything to do with climate change.
Before.
Anyway, let's shut him up for a second. Question I got to answer here. Keith Ellisbrook. Wait. I want to answer this question. How can a separatist party keep a federal party in power? That is a good question, Keith, because it shouldn't be allowed. There should be some differentiation between a party that actually believes in United Canada and a party that wants to pull Quebec out of Confederation. And that party should not be allowed to prop up Justin Trudeau's corrupt government. That is an absolute sham. I think everybody watching this right now would agree. That is a disgrace.
Canadians, it's truly shameful. Mr. Speaker, for a second time, what concession did the Bloc Québécois obtain to keep this incompetent Prime Minister in power?
Yes. We need an answer. What concession did corrupt Trudeau give to the corrupt Bloc?
The Honourable Minister, Mr. Speaker, we won't take any lessons from people who thinks that humans and dinosaurs lived at the same time, and that TV shows like the Flintstones are documentaries.
What the hell are you talking about, you fathead? This guy is just...
We are going to fight climate change, and the Conservatives want to make us take a step back on the environment.
What is this moron talking about?
And bring us back to the Stone Age.
Yeah, there he goes with the Stone Age. Who wants to bring us back to the Stone Age? Pablo, you do. Stephen Guilbeault, you do. Justin Trudeau, you do. You want to shut the lights off. You want to shut the power off.
Mr. Speaker, endless announcements, the photo ops, and rhetoric. But for all their talk, the Environment Commissioner has given the Liberals a failing grade in the climate change fight. Canada is going to miss its target.
Oh, no. We're going to miss our target. What is this? The Liberals aren't holy enough for this NDP idiot. This dolt doesn't think the Liberals are doing enough for climate change. I mean, this guy really needs a good dose of reality. I mean, Pablo looks like a homeless person, and this guy maybe should spend a few weeks on the street. Oh, we're doing more. We're doing so much. Listen to this idiot.
Release, he said that the last year's plan is the best plan to fight climate change in the history of this country. I didn't say that. It's the Environment Commissioner that did.
Yeah, it's all a charade. It's all a charade.
Green Party to allow Canada to go faster and further on the fight against climate change? Yes. Despite what they're saying, yes.
Yeah. Oh, you want to go faster and farther. Shut the lights off.
The Liberals are out
I
of
don't want to
touch
listen
with
to Jenny.
Canadians struggling to find.
You know, I got to say, at this point, Canada produces 1.4 to 1.8% of greenhouse gas emissions, global greenhouse gas emissions. That's nothing. So we can all freeze and we can all live in caves, and it won't make a difference to so-called climate change. It's not going to make a difference. And these idiots know that. They're using this to make life miserable for you while they continue to jet set around the world, attending their environmental conferences, having a great and wealthy time. Blah, blah, blah.
Of investing in more housing.
There's the guy with 3-time COVID.
This morning with Canada Lands Company, we announced the construction of 28,000 additional new homes in the next 5 years. 20% of them at least.
You think this guy could have found a real job someplace? I don't think so.
Of affordable homes that we have constructed in the last 30 years.
He's only employable in Trudeau's cabinet because it doesn't matter how stupid you are. You can still get a job in Trudeau's cabinet.
The honourable member from Yukon.
Mr. Speaker, even as weather, high prices, and tough economic times, they remain deeply concerned about climate change.
And here's a nice softball.
Welcome actions from our government to reduce fossil fuel emissions.
I'm sure they welcome them.
And reducing costs.
They can use heat pumps in the Yukon too.
Yukon-based studies have shown
and they can freeze up there just as well.
In very cold climates. The Prime Minister has invited all interested provinces and territories to join the co-delivery program for heat pumps. The Minister of Natural Resources update
what
the
a
House
cruel
on the
joke.
progress in bringing this program to my writing in the
Bring Wilkinson. He's the half. He's separated at birth with Christian Freeland.
The Minister of Natural Resources.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do want to thank my colleague from Yukon for the question and his tireless advocacy for his constituents. Heat pumps have been well tested and adopted in northern climates for years. That is why we are working to deploy more cold climate heat pumps across the territory to reduce ongoing energy bills and to reduce emissions. In fact, heating oil actually serves over 50% of the population in Yukon, making it a pressing issue of affordability and climate.
Yeah, all 50
I had a
people.
conversation recently with the Premier of Yukon. He is extremely interested in moving forward on a joint delivery, and I expect that we will have good things to say very soon.
Yes, they can all freeze in the Yukon too. What a great plan, Johnny boy.
For Portneuf, Jacques Cartier. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, we saw the true colors of the Bloc. Once again, they let Quebecers down by voting with the Liberals. And when we say it costs a lot to vote Bloc, we saw the proof once again yesterday. Voting against the application of the tax break to all forms of residential heating in Canada for all Canadians? Well, the Bloc voted against it. Incredible. This costly new Bloc Liberal coalition is doing nothing good for Quebec. What concessions did the Prime Minister make to the Bloc to hold on to power for another 2 years? The Honourable Minister of the Environment. Last week, the Honourable colleague asked what my former Greenpeace colleagues thought of my work, and then he thought what Equiterre thought about it. And here's what they said in terms of our plan. It's the first time that we have such a detailed strategy to attain our targets that we set. David
Greenpeace
Suzuki
is an
said,
environmental
this plan
terrorist
has
group.
the best chance of success of any
So
other
I don't give a
previous
damn
Canadian
what
plan.
Greenpeace says
Greenpeace,
about your
for
plan.
the first time, a climate plan in Canada sees
this.
the oil
Look
and
at
gas
this
sector
bloody-
significantly reducing its
Look at this inept
emissions.
fool.
What is the Conservatives' plan? I don't see it.
This inept fool is up there grandstanding about Greenpeace, which he used to belong to.
Christmas gift to 97% of Canadians. Merry Christmas. You're going to have a carbon tax in your home heating this winter. The Prime Minister literally gave Canadians a lump of coal by voting against a common sense conservative motion to take the tax off and keep the heat on. Now, we thought the Liberal NDP's carbon tax coalition was bad, but there's a new addition to the carbon tax naughty list. The Bloc joined the Liberals and voted to keep the carbon tax on home heating this winter. Which gift did the Prime Minister leave under the separatist tree to protect his government for 2 more years?
You're not going to find it.
Minister for Natural Resources.
Not today.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I've said a number of times, it is important to actually have a plan to address critical affordability issues in a long-term way, but also
We need a
continue
plan to get
address the
rid
climate
of this
crisis.
government.
Those are the measures that we have put into place. I have to say again that I do find it the height of hypocrisy that my honorable colleague across the way, who ran on a platform that included putting a price on pollution, gets up in the House today and actually says what he's saying.
Oh.
It is the height of hypocrisy.
And you are a height
The
of
honourable
idiocy.
member from Foothills.
The Prime Minister joined the separatists to divide Canadians. Those Canadians will have to pay a carbon tax on their home heating over the winter, and 3% of Canadians who will get a pause on the pain. It's clear that the Liberals and the Bloc, their Christmas gift to Canadians is to punish families for heating their homes this winter. They voted against a common sense conservative motion to take the tax off for every single Canadian. Again, what Christmas wish did the Prime Minister grant the separatists for the Liberals to avoid an election on the carbon tax?
Yeah. What did they give the Bloc?
Resources.
You know, Mr. Speaker, I think every party in this House actually is concerned about affordability issues, but the only party in this House that does not care about the climate crisis is the Conservative Party of Canada.
Because
The only
no
party
climate
that
crisis.
actually has no plan to address it and doesn't even believe that climate change is real. Mr. Speaker, yesterday, the leader of the opposition essentially said he would walk away from Canada's climate targets, walk away from every member of the international community. He would walk away from our children's future, and he would walk away from a clean economy that will actually create jobs and economic opportunity across the country. Shame on him.
Clean economy. This government is so dirty. They shouldn't be talking about any clean economy, because this is a corrupt, dirty government.
From South Shore, St. Margaret's.
After 8 years, the revolting Atlantic Caucus and the panicking, plummeting Prime Minister now have two coalitions with which to flip Canadians the bird. The costly coalition with the NDP to drive the cost of everything up. Unfortunately, Canadians know too much about that. The other, according to the Quebec media, is with the separatist Bloc, who committed to keep the Liberals in power for another 2 years. The costly coalition Prime Minister is not worth the cost. Will the Prime Minister release his full carbon tax coalition agreement with the separatist Bloc?
Now, this is really bad news. And
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I think my honourable friend across the way used the word revolting. You know what is revolting? Are the tactics, the circus act that is going on in the Natural Resources Committee, blocking the passage of Bill C-49.
Your antics are revolting.
Of the translators in that committee, it is an enormous waste of
You
taxpayers'
are
money.
a revolting minister.
The Premier of Nova Scotia, the Conservative Premier of Nova Scotia, and the Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador. It will create jobs and economic opportunity.
You are
for the
so
future
out of your
in a
mind.
manner that is consistent with fighting the climate
You
crisis.
don't
Shame on
have any sense of reality. This guy is so detached from reality. He has never probably met a normal Canadian, an ordinary Canadian. Maybe in the last 50 years, I don't know. This is such a farce. And we are in deep trouble.
Beauport, Côte-Beaupré, Ile d'Orléans,
All right,
Charlevoix. Mr.
who the hell
Speaker,
is that?
the situation is very serious
All
in
right, the blockhead.
Beauport, Côte.
Gotta say this at this juncture here. If we have if we have to deal with a Trudeau government that can reach to the bloc as separatists and can reach to the left with the NDP to stay in power, we are in bad shape. This country is in bad shape. Trudeau is so desperate. He's so ravenously hungry to stay on as leader of the Liberal Party. He will do anything to sustain his grip on that party and on power. And this is very bad news for Canada because the worst in many ways is yet to come with the Trudeau government. And we have got to find a way to use the Parliament of Canada in a democratic means to get rid of this Liberal government because it is going to be increasingly catastrophic for Canadians. I'll put this minister back on.
To the CCB and to the $10 a day daycare. This will allow more women to remain in the workplace. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Beauport-Limoilou. Mr. Speaker, there is going to be a wave of small business bankruptcies if the federal government does not defer repayment of the student loans over the loss of the subsidy,
yes.
according
That's
to the
all
Insolvency Professionals Association.
How can you take any of these people seriously now that they've agreed to prop up Trudeau? How can you take any of these blockheads in the least bit seriously? Because all they're there for now is to prop up a federal government that they're supposedly totally against, that they were supposedly opposed to. Now they're there to prop up the Trudeau government. And I mean, this is such an incredible facade. This is all this is. And that they are only there for their pensions. Oh, Chrystia Freeland.
Have created this program, which allowed us to provide $40 million to small businesses in Canada during the serious challenges
she's
they were
really
facing.
warmed up today. She's
And I'd
using
like to
both
thank
hands to wave at you.
our partners for supporting these crucial programs, even though the
Remember when she got
Conservatives
chewed out
said
in
our
Alberta?
pandemic support wasn't good. What's important today is to underscore that small businesses now have until December 31st, 2026
blah, blah. I remember when Chrystia Freeland got chewed out when she was in Alberta, where she, she says, "I am from Alberta," but at the time I thought it might be a little harsh. I don't anymore.
Now, the NDP leader said his NDP MPs would be supporting our Conservative motion to keep the heat on. However, not all British Columbia NDP MPs voted to take the carbon tax off. Now, after 8 years of this NDP Liberal government, this Prime Minister is just not worth the cost. Will the Prime Minister quit forcing British Columbians' rates on British Columbia for the carbon tax rates, which he plans to quadruple on home heating?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I have been saying, we have a plan to ensure
long-term
affordability for particularly
look at him.
vulnerable Canadians.
Same mannerism, same
Cost of heating
contempt.
oil is 2 to 4 times that of
I've heard it 100 times.
On which province you live in, it is accelerated over 75%.
Yeah. And you reduce the cost of it, people are not going to use it anymore.
In a way that will give savings to people over the long term. It will do it in a manner that fights climate change. I had the opportunity to speak with Premier Eby about it last week, and I believe that people in British Columbia will have access to exactly the same proposal as
that's going to you're going to wean people off oil, of course. If they pay less for it, why would they buy it?
The pain of his carbon tax
This
on
guy is such a fool.
Canadian families in the areas where his polls were the lowest. The Liberal Rural Affairs Minister said this. She said that if people in other regions wanted to see a pause as well, then they needed to vote Liberal. But the people in Calgary Skyview did vote for a Liberal Member of Parliament. And yesterday he could have voted to keep the heat on and take the tax off. But instead he voted no to the people of Calgary Skyview.
They want the heat off. You're right, Rachel.
So hell-bent on quadrupling their carbon tax that the member from Calgary Skyview left his constituents out in the cold.
Good.
They want to shut the power off. They want to turn the lights off.
Thank you, Mr.
That's
Speaker.
their
As
plan.
I said, we are moving forward on a program that will ensure long-term affordability for people who utilize heating oil, do so in a manner that is consistent with addressing climate change. I have reached out to my counterpart in the government of Alberta, and we will be having conversations about how Alberta can participate in this project moving forward. But I would say once again,
deal with some of the
that
comments
it is time,
here.
and I think Canadians are expecting the Conservative Party to be able to at least tell folks that they believe in climate change, they have a plan for addressing the climate crisis in a manner that is consistent with long-term economic.
Oh, shut up. You've got nothing to say. Go on to respond to Karen Mitchell here. Says Liberal Bloc Party, I'm sure you promised them higher equalization payments. Why not? Probably because Quebec sucks up most of the equalization payments and still pretends it wants to be an independent country, even though it would not last for 3 years as an independent country. So you can bet that the Liberals probably did offer them more in equalization because it's never enough.
Winners and losers, and the winners are the 3% that use oil to heat their homes. They won't have to pay
Yes,
carbon
those
tax
are the
for the
winners.
next 3 years, but the rest of Canada will. When the Minister for Rural Affairs was asked about this, she said, well, they just need to vote more Liberals in place and then we'll give them our attention, referring to those in other parts of the country, of course. Now, for those that live in the constituency of Edmonton Centre, they did elect a Liberal member of Parliament, and yet they were not showing that favoritism. They were not showing the benefit of having the carbon tax removed. And so my
they
question
elected
is
a real
simple.
windbag.
Why is this government so hell-bent that the people of Edmonton Centre still have to pay the carbon tax on their home heating?
This is such a farce. This is this windbag from Edmonton Centre.
And again, I'm going to,
He suggested everybody convert
obviously
to oil.
an opportunity to respond, but I'll ask all members that I'm quite aware of the time that members have to pose and to respond to their questions. I politely
I'm not
declined
sure
the
you're aware of
reminders
anything, Greg
as to how to
Fergus,
do that.
because
The
you
Honourable Minister for Health.
completely inept with
Thank
your
you, Mr.
job.
Speaker. And of course, the members opposite know that more than 8 out of 10
Oh, they got to
Canadians
bring
get
up
more
this
back
piece of
than they
baggage.
pay. But why are we hell bent on this? Because our planet demands it. Mr. Speaker, 15,000. That's the number of Canadians who died prematurely as a result of air pollution in the country. That cost.
And that's got nothing to do with climate change, you idiot.
It is escalating. If we refuse to take action on this, not only do we have a moral and fiscal imperative.
See, they're confusing, deliberately confusing pollution, real pollution, with fake pollution.
And move back to an aggressive state.
It is outrageous the way these people lie, especially this piece of baggage who's losing his hair now.
The honourable member for Pontiac. Mr. Speaker, more than 400,000 Quebecers still use home heating oil. Mr. Speaker, Quebecers are ready for the green transition, but not everyone has the means to replace their heater.
But there's heat pumps
and
available.
That is why programs like the Canada's Green Homes program and the affordable oil subsidy for heat pumps are very important.
Isn't that
Can
lovely?
the Minister of the Environment tell us
Don't you just
how
hate
these
the way they
programs are
suck up to
used
the minister like this?
and
I mean, it's really just
how these programs can
disgusting
be
to
enhanced
watch.
in Quebec?
They just kiss the minister's ass questions.
The Honourable Minister of the
Yes.
Environment and Climate Change. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my honourable colleague for her
Oh,
question.
he loves a question like that. Yeah.
We know that home heating oil
I'd
is
like to
the
thank the minister, the
most
member for that
expensive
brown nosing question.
type of oil and has one that has seen the highest increase in recent years. Our heat pump program wants to save every family that has one $2,500
No doubt approved by Greenpeace too.
a year.
Greenpeace loves your
And we're
program.
working with provinces to implement this program as quickly as possible to eliminate home heating oil across the country.
The Honourable Member from Selkirk Interlake Eastmain.
Manitoba's new NDP premier has joined the chorus calling on these
Give it
liberals
to him,
pause the
James.
carbon tax. After 8 long years, everyone knows that this prime minister is just not worth the cost, and his liberal MPs in Winnipeg are failing Manitobans. Yesterday, the member for Winnipeg North could have voted to take the tax off and keep the heat on for Manitobans.
Winnipeg
Instead, he
North,
voted
that-
to leave his constituents
Yeah,
out
right
in the
on, James.
cold. And now these liberals want to quadruple the carbon tax. Why does the member from Winnipeg North always follow orders from his prime minister at the expense of his own constituents?
Let's see if the member from Winnipeg North has anything to say about this, but he's Mr. Loudmouth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Oh,
As
no.
I've said a number of times,
We're gonna listen to
this is a
Johnny
policy
Boy.
that is about addressing affordability
Yeah,
for folks who actually are suffering from the fact that heating oil is a much more expensive way to heat your home. We do this in a manner that actually will enable us to continue the fight against climate change and help folks in the long term with affordability concerns. I would tell you that we have had discussions with the government of Manitoba. I look forward to being able to move forward on a joint basis with the government of Manitoba. And I'm pleased to see the government in Manitoba actually recognize the existence of climate change, something that the honourable opposition does not do.
The honourable member from Provencher.
After 8 years, we now have the socialists, the separatists, and this prime minister who's just not worth the cost. They're all part of this costly carbon tax coalition that is leaving Canadians out in the cold. The rural affairs minister recently told Manitobans that if they wanted the tax break, they had to elect more Liberals. Well, guess what? The folks in St. Boniface, St. Vital did elect a Liberal, and they're still paying the carbon tax. Yesterday, he had a chance to vote to keep the tax off and the heat on for his constituents. Why did that member choose to leave the members of St. Boniface, St. Vital in the cold?
Because they don't give a damn. That's why. I'd like to hear them just say they really don't give a damn about people. They only care about climate change. They only care about ideology. That's the only thing that matters to these scoundrels.
Members, in their preparation of questions,
shut
the
up.
questions should be directed towards the government or the parliamentary secretaries, anything that is, or to committee chairs, for the purposes of related to the business of the government or of the House.
This guy is just
a question
so
to a member
hard to
is
take.
not one that is normally recognized. I think I saw a minister standing up.
What the hell is he even talking
issue,
about?
but if there is no minister standing up.
He can't even remember where these people are from.
If the minister wishes to
Yeah,
answer
the
this
minister is
question,
standing up. You half-wit. Yes, the minister is standing up.
We're talking to Mr. Speaker, so I was.
Oh,
saying,
he never misses a chance to stand
I'm a
up.
liberal and a proud socialist, Mr. Speaker, but this reminds me of a certain quote
A
from
proud. Did you hear
Mr.
that?
Harper, who talked
He's a
about
proud
the
Marxist, is
fight
what he is.
against climate change as a
At least he
socialist
admitted
plot.
he's a
That's what
socialist.
the Conservative Party, and here it is. You have it again, Mr. Speaker. They do not believe that climate change is an issue. They do not believe we should do anything about it. They oppose electrification of transportation. They oppose deals like Volkswagen, Stellantis, and Nordvolt. They oppose wind development off the shores of Newfoundland and Nova Scotia, Mr. Speaker. They have no plan to fight climate change. They have no plan for the economy. They have no plan for the future of Canada.
Oh, yeah. What the hell have you got? So Wendy Guilbeault just admitted he's a socialist. How does that make other liberals feel? Is this a socialist party now? So it's a place for socialists, is it?
Hence, the divisive decision by the Prime Minister to pause the payment of the carbon tax for just 3% of Canadians while doing nothing for the rest. However, in yesterday's vote, the member from Hamilton Centre didn't even bother to vote. If the NDP member from Hamilton Centre won't do his job, Conservatives will. Will the Prime Minister quit forcing Ontarians to pay a quadrupled carbon tax on their home heating?
It is just appalling what this country has come to. We got a corrupt Liberal government being propped up by a corrupt separatist party. Is this what Canada is all about now? Is this what Canada has become? And not to mention a bloody inept speaker who doesn't seem to know what he's doing half the time. It is outrageous. You know, I watch this and it makes me want to fight on, though, because these people are so incompetent and so corrupt and so crooked. I've never seen more crooks in one goddamn government.
So I would like to just point out that question, although the preamble dealt with a member who is not of the government, the final part of the question, and that sort of hybrid question, was directed towards the Prime Minister.
Thank you for your assistance.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if that member
And this is the one who wants to change history.
about helping Ontarians, then he should be asking the Premier of Ontario to join the program to provide free heat pumps to the hundreds of thousands of Ontarians who would qualify, as he knows, and as every member in this House full well knows, this is a program that applies across the country to transition folks away from home heating oil so that they don't have dirty, more expensive ways to heat their home. We can do this for cheaper, and we can help Canadians both with affordability and the existential threat of fighting climate change, something that conservatives
Oh, they
continue
had
to
to
deny.
get the
Thank you, Mr.
existential
Speaker.
threat in there. Oh, look at
The
Freeland.
honourable
Oh,
member
good
from
job.
West Vancouver,
Job.
Sunshine Coast, Sea to Sky Country.
Mr.
Good
Speaker,
job.
85,000
Lying.
British Columbians still rely on oil to heat their
Oh,
homes.
here's
An extremely
Mr.
polluting fuel that is up to
Mr.
4 times as
Softball.
expensive as natural gas.
Oh,
Recently,
blah,
the
blah,
government
blah.
of Canada announced a new affordability package that'll
Can
help
the good
Canadians
minister
ditch
explain why this
expensive
is
and polluting
beneficial to
oil
everybody?
furnaces for heat pumps that will save them money on their home heating bills and fight climate change. Recently, BC's
Look at these
Premier
people
David
read their
Eby was
blind,
seen
reading
at
their
the
cue card.
Premier's meeting, proudly donning an "I love heat pump" shirt. Can the Minister of Energy and Natural Resources
If you're a
provide
moron,
an update
you can
to this
buy an
House
I Love
on the
Heat Pump
progress
shirt.
being made to bring this important affordability measure for
So
British Columbians?
there must be a huge market out there
The
amongst
Honourable
liberals to buy these
Minister for
T-shirts.
Natural Resources.
Would you believe
Thank you,
this?
Mr. Speaker. I
Thank
do
you,
want
Mr. Speaker. I want to
acknowledge
thank
the
you for
question
that
from my
intelligent
colleague
question
and my neighbor,
and for his great work.
recognize his ongoing advocacy for the people and the environment of West Vancouver, Sunshine Coast, Sea to Sky
It's all a
Country.
charade.
Canada works best when Canadians work together. We are reaching out proactively to every province and territory to discuss participation in this important program to address
proactively.
affordability issues in a
Yeah.
manner consistent with fighting climate
Yeah.
change. We have had very good discussions with Premier Eby and Minister Osborne, and I expect we will have good things to say for the people of British
And
Columbia
I
in
expect
the very
you
near
won't
term.
be there much longer. But my God, 2 years is too long.
The honourable member from Winnipeg Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Winnipeg's Christmas Cheer Board is
Oh, no.
anticipating record demand for their hampers due to the cost of living crisis. 19,000 requests so
There's
far this year.
another
And while big
MP couldn't get to work today. Don't give me it. You know, she's going on about the liberals, and that's who she's propping up. There's only one opposition party in the House now. You realize that? That's the legacy of yesterday. There's only one opposition party left in the House, the Conservative Party. Because the NDP is a farce. The Bloc is a farce. They are not opposition parties. They are in the government's pocket. Yeah. He's standing up. Yeah. Does this guy strike you?
I appreciate the question from
I'll
my
re-
colleague. We know right now that
There's a
many
genocide.
Canadians are having a hard time putting food on the table. And that's exactly why we continue to do the hard work on this side of the House to support
Hard work?
Canadian families
I don't
and
think you've ever done any
organizations
hard
doing
work.
that work. Whether that's from the Community Services
done
Recovery
the
Fund,
hard
or whether
work.
that's the work that we're doing to develop
Liberals
the
don't know the
national
meaning of
school food
hard
policy
work.
amongst our partners. We are here to support
They know
Canadian families,
soft
Mr. Speaker.
life.
Thank you.
That's what they understand is soft life, not hard
The
work.
honourable member from Nunavut.
The gap for First Nations infrastructure is at $350 billion. The government committed to end the gap for First Nations by 2030, but the Liberals have spent less than 3% of what
Not
is
enough
needed.
money.
This does not even include funding
More
for Métis
spending.
and Inuit, which would make the gap even more extreme. Indigenous communities remain neglected despite the calls for actions. When will this government recognize Indigenous people's capacity and work with them to fill these gaps?
They'll get some reply about reconciliation
Minister.
and
Thank you very
spend
much,
more
Mr. Speaker,
money
and I thank my
so the
colleague,
chiefs
from Nunavut for
can
this
skim
really
it
important
and
question.
spend it
In fact,
on their
after
private
a decade
lifestyle.
under the Harper government of no investments in First Nations communities, our government got
Oh,
to work
look,
with First Nations partners
Patty
to
hides you.
start
What
to
an
close that
airhead.
infrastructure gap on
Just
things
keep
like clean water,
throwing
Mr.
money at
Speaker,
the problem,
boil
Patty
water
girl.
advisories that have been left unattended for a decade, on things like housing, Mr. Speaker, community centers, health centers, and schools. Mr. Speaker, I agree with the member opposite. The gap is huge, but we are making progress.
What a liar. You know, and the reserve system now, and this apartheid. Let's have we're at the end of question period.
Member from
We'll just
Quebec.
listen to the point of order for a second here.
Mr. Speaker, after I asked my question, you indicated that the question should be directed through you to a minister of the Crown and not just to any random Liberal. Well, in fact, I was asking my question to the member of St. Boniface, St. Vital, who is a minister of the Crown. He's a minister of Northern Affairs.
Good point, Ted.
Who did not vote in favor of reducing home heating bills for his constituents. And so it was actually a
Anyway, very good point. And that's, what can you say? This is a very, very dark moment for Canada. And I cannot think of another time where I have been less optimistic about getting rid of this Trudeau government, because he's got everybody in his pocket now, doesn't he? He's got the separatist bloc and he's got the socialist NDP, and he has sewn up the opposition. He's got the only opposition party left in this House of Commons is the Conservative Party of Canada. Now, I'm not here to sell memberships for the Conservative Party of Canada, but in terms of what we need in this country, we need opposition to the Trudeau government, and that's all that's left. Thank God there's some courage left on the floor of the House of Commons, because the other parties have sold out to Justin Trudeau. He is so hungry for power, he will do anything to stay in power. So thank you, people, for watching today. What can the people do? We have got to if you've got a Liberal or an NDP, don't worry about the goddamn bloc, because they're blockheads and they don't really matter. But we can influence some Liberal MPs and some NDP MPs. We've got to minimize the damage until we can get rid of this Trudeau government. We need to resolve to resist. We need to stop what's going on, because the worst is yet to come with this Trudeau government. I tell you, there's worse censorship to come. And you heard today, we got blockheads and we got Liberals both agreeing they need more censorship. Yes, more bills like C11 and C18, which I'm sure listeners and viewers know have been devastating for the free press and free media in Canada. I don't know how much longer we can be doing this as independent media, because the Trudeau government wants to shut everybody down. And he wants to subsidize the legacy media so it says nice things about him. And we heard that again today. We heard nothing but lies and nonsense and gibberish and rubbish from the Liberal front bench, from all of these cabinet ministers who have nothing to say except reading their script and their talking points and reading what Justin Trudeau tells them to say. We are in an impasse in this country. We've got to keep fighting. So thanks for watching. I did a great interview this morning with Jerry Ritz, who you might remember as the former Minister of Agriculture, a Saskatchewan MP from Battleford. And he had lots to say about what's going on with farmers today, how Justin Trudeau and the Liberal government is waging a war on farmers through fertilizer and through regulations, and how we are facing famine and empty grocery stores because of Trudeau's policies. I urge you to watch that. It's a Stand on Guard episode I posted this morning about noon. Please have a look. It was nice to talk to Jerry again. And I tell you, I miss common sense ministers like that, who actually have had a job in their life, who've actually had to work on a farm, who have owned farms, and continue to know what absolutely everybody associated with real agriculture knows. The Trudeau government is deadly for farmers and deadly for Canadians. Thanks so much for watching today. I'll be back again tomorrow. As I said, the Freedom Convoy trial, it's been recessed. They're trying to bankrupt Tamara Leach and Chris Barber. They're trying to do whatever they can to put a protest chill in, so people don't think they have the right to free assembly and protest in this country. You attack the Trudeau government, they're going to put you in jail, or they're going to threaten to put you in jail, or they're going to put you in trial for 3 months on ridiculous, trumped-up charges that are usually related to a drunken weekend at a family quarrel. This is absolutely outrageous. Thanks again for watching, folks.